Joining us now here on Locked on Buckeyes, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome Mr. Gary Stokan. He is the president and CEO of the Peach Bowl Incorporation. Gary, welcome to the podcast.
Jay, thanks for having us. Look forward to talking with you.
Yes, sir. We are on the heels of a wild, weird college football weekend where Alabama lost to LSU, Clemson lost to Notre Dame, and we're here after a weird Ohio State game talking about the possibility of Ohio State playing in the college football playoff, possibly the Peach Bowl later on this year. But Gary, I mentioned something to you earlier just about Ohio State and them not playing in the Peach Bowl ever in their history. What would it mean to you and the Peach Bowl group and the organization if Ohio State was lucky enough to play in the Peach Bowl in this season?
Well, Ohio State's one of the biggest brands in college football, and so to have them play in anybody's game, I did some research on the top 20 broadcasts over 9 weeks, and Ohio State is in 4 of those top 20 rankings of viewership. So Ohio State's a great brand, obviously, from a national TV perspective. Their fans are incredible, the way they follow the Buckeyes. They have a lot of fans down here in the Southeast and in the metro Atlanta area. And, Gene Smith and Ryan Day are just great people, good to work with. So we look forward to hosting Ohio State if we have the opportunity.
What do you think about this year's Ohio State football team?
Well, I saw Ohio State against Wisconsin, and I thought, at that time, and probably still do, I think Ohio State and Michigan probably have the best offensive lines in college football. And obviously, when they're all healthy, the wide receiver, even when they're not healthy, I think they may have the best wide receiver core in the country. And certainly C.J. Stroud has to be up for the Heisman, the type of numbers he's put up and the type of player he is.
Yeah, it's pretty insane to think about how Ryan Day, in just a short amount of time, has built upon the foundation that Urban Meyer built and made following Jim Tressel and the interesting way that Urban Meyer came into. Ryan Day took it to a different level. You mentioned Stroud specifically. I thought Justin Fields was going to be the best Ohio State quarterback I would ever see in my lifetime. And then C.J. Stroud comes around, and he's doing amazing things in Columbus as well. Imagine that being down in Atlanta, the college football capital, as that is the home of the Hall of Fame. Gary, I'm not in your shoes, but just a thought. You talk about the eyeballs that Ohio State gets and the viewership. But imagine even Stroud, that amazing quarterback, maybe after winning the Heisman, playing in Atlanta. I mean, just a thought of that makes me excited because I know how big football is down there in the Southeast. The path and the travel would be pretty easy for the Buckeyes to get down to Atlanta. So everything, if that worked out, Stroud in Atlanta on that big stage, that's something I think I personally would love to see. And I think everyone down there in the Southeast would love to see Ohio State down there as well.
We would be tremendously proud to have Ohio State. Their whole, as I said, Gene Smith all the way down, to have C.J. Stroud, who obviously, as you mentioned, has to be up for the Heisman this year. And certainly the fans that the Buckeyes have and the viewership that goes along with hosting Ohio State, and certainly the team who has put themselves, right there, number 2 in the country, have put themselves right there to be in the mix of, playing for the national championship and playing in the semifinal game in the ChickfilA Peach Bowl potentially.
Now, if I get this correct, the Peach Bowl is also the organization that runs the ChickfilA Kickoff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Imagine how crazy it would be. I know down the road, Ohio State and Alabama play in a regular season game. Imagine how crazy it would be if in 2024, when Ohio State plays down in Miami for the Mercedes-Benz game, but then prior to that, this year, they possibly play in Atlanta, and then down the road in the ChickfilA Kickoff. I mean, there's a lot of eyeballs just down in Atlanta. And I think Ryan Day would love that because it helps recruiting. So it helps, I do believe, the Peach Bowl and their notoriety and their publicity is simply what that bowl has done and the revenue it brings, not just to college football, but also to the city of Atlanta. But also, like Ohio State itself, new quarterback will be there. Hopefully Ryan Day's still there. It would really be quite an amazing thing that toward the end of Alabama's tenure with Nick Saban, Ryan Day and Ohio State face off there in the ChickfilA Kickoff game. I know it's down the road, more probably forecast in the future, but that also would be an amazing thing as well, and maybe something where maybe it's in the works now. I don't know the behind the scenes conversations you have had, but it would be nice if that was a thing in a few years when Alabama and Ohio State play in the regular season.
Jay, from your lips to God's ears, I need to hire you because I'd love to have Alabama play Ohio State in our Chick-fil-A kickoff game. We do have Clemson playing Georgia in 2024 to open the season. And, over the next few years, in 2024, if the playoff does move forward in 24, we would host a quarterfinal game in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And then in January, we would host the national championship game in Atlanta. And then in 25 season, we host the national semifinal game. So, 3 really good opportunities for Ohio State. Obviously, this year, the semifinal, 25 a semifinal, 25 after the 24 season, the national championship game. Hopefully, one of those years, we do see Ohio State playing in Atlanta.
That would definitely be a nice thing if that was to happen down the road. But this also makes me pause and realize you mentioned 22, 24, 25, talking about possibility of expansion, a quarterfinal game, being down there in the Peach Bowl. Well, prior to 2014, it was a BCS from 98 until 2013, and the Peach Bowl was not a part of that exclusive foursome of bowls. I believe it was a Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, and Sugar Bowl. They added the Cotton Bowl and the Peach Bowl once the CFP became a thing, and that's a part. All 6 of those bowls are part of the New Year's Six. So that was a new journey, a new venture for you in your business and in your career, but also a great opportunity for the Peach Bowl, because prior to that, they still had the BCS, still having just those 4 bowls, BCS bowls, and then the national championship. There would be probably no chance still for it to be Ohio State down there in the Peach Bowl. But here we are in 2022. Things have changed. Things have evolved. What are your thoughts about simply being a part of this exclusive group of the New Year's Six?
Well, it's really interesting. In 2006, when the BCS had those 4 bowls that you mentioned, they were going to add another bowl game to run a championship game. And we put in a very strong bid, thought we were going to win. And the 4 existing bowls, the Rose, Sugar, Orange, and Cotton, Fiesta, made an appeal to the BCS commissioners to host their bowl game and then 2 weeks later rotate the national championship. So we lost that opportunity. Ironically enough, the NCAA legislated a 12th game to the schedule. And I told my board, I said, well, if they're not going to let us in the BCS on the backside of the year, we're going to start the BCS on the front side of the season. And so we started the Chick-fil-A kickoff game and opened up with Clemson versus Alabama in 2008. And we've been on that run ever since. Both teams have since won national championships. And Alabama, if Nick Saban were on, he would tell you, when they came in ranked 25th that year and Clemson was number 9, Alabama won 34-10. The next year we had them against Virginia Tech, number 7, and Alabama was number 5 in our Chick-fil-A kickoff game. And Alabama won the national championship with 19 kids from Georgia on their roster. So Nick Saban would tell you that was the start. 2008 was the start of the Alabama run they've been ever since. So, we've been a part of changing the face of college football on the front side of the season to the point now where you have Ohio State scheduling Notre Dame in the first game of the year.
Yeah.
Prior to us starting the kickoff game, that would have never happened. So, it feels great to be a part of that. And then to elevate ourselves with the advent of the CFP, to join the CFP in 2014 and host the first CFP game with Ole Miss and TCU. And now to host semifinals in 16, 19, we'll host them this year in 22, and then again in 25. Atlanta has really grown with the sport of college football. And, as you said, a lot of people call us the capital of college football now because of the great games we've been able to put on with the kickoff games, the SEC championship every year, the CFP games, the College Football Hall of Fame being here. So it's a great place for college football. Our fans get it. The corporations support it, and we're very blessed to have great volunteers, great staff, great board, and great corporate support and fan support here in Atlanta.
I even went back and looked at simply this year, and I didn't realize it was the past couple of years that the game on, you guys had the Chick-fil-A kickoff game, I believe it's on a Saturday. Then I saw somewhere that you guys have a Monday night game as well. How crazy would it be down the road, Gary? I don't know if I'm just spitballing stuff out and maybe it's already in, you've already thought about it or not. But then that Saturday, and even that Sunday, which is normally on a campus, just take the whole weekend. Like, I know it's kind of crazy to have 3 games in 3 days in one venue, but back to back to back right there in the Peach Bowl. You talk about how it helped the recruiting of Alabama back in 2008. It would also greatly help Ohio State's recruiting if that was a thing where they were able to play in that bowl. Maybe not that Saturday, maybe not that Monday, but it could be that Sunday where there's no NFL football. All eyes are on one spot, Atlanta. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's going to happen. These are just thoughts that run through my mind as you discuss what's happened since the Chick-fil-A kickoff game has been a part of the college football opening weekend.
Well, ironically enough, we almost did that with Ohio State a couple years ago when Oregon and Ohio State were scheduled to play. And because Oregon didn't think it was going to get a game back in 2031 or 32, something like that, we had talks with Ohio State and Oregon to play that game in Atlanta. I think it would have been on a Sunday because we had a Saturday and a Monday game already scheduled. In 2020, we had 3 games scheduled in a week. We had Florida State, West Virginia on Saturday, Georgia, Virginia on Monday, and North Carolina, Auburn on that next Saturday, which has never been done, 3 games in a week. And unfortunately, COVID caused the cancellation of all 3 of those games. But, you know, ironically enough, the first week of the season, and this is through 9 weeks, the first week of the season, 4 games are ranked in the top 14 viewerships of college football. You had Ohio State, Notre Dame as 3rd most viewed game of this season. You had Florida State, LSU, which was on that Sunday, the first week, is number 5. Our Georgia-Oregon game and the Chick-fil-A kickoff game is number 8. And the Georgia Tech-Clemson game on Monday is number 14. So there's 4 games that first week of college football that still are the top viewed games through 9 weeks of college football. That's how strong and important that first week of college football is, because people are starved to see college football again on TV.
Yes, they are. Gary, we're almost up out of time. I want to end it with this thought here. You mentioned the future of the Peach Bowl and how there will possibly be, well, there will be involvement in the expansion of the college football playoff. 12 games, not sure when it's going to happen. But if it is, it could be a quarterfinal game, a semifinal game, national championship game, possibly in back-to-back years. What are your thoughts about the expansion? Do you think it helps the sport? I think you believe it helps the sport just based off some things you said already. But what are just some of your general thoughts about the future and the expansion of the college football playoff?
Well, I can debate it both ways. I think right now we're in the midst of a playoff. You know, number 1 played number 3 this last weekend. Number 6 played number 10. Number 4 played, an unranked team that I think is going to be ranked this week.
Correct.
So you're seeing ranked teams. Ohio State's going to play Michigan, in 2 weeks. Number 1 or number 2 or number 3 playing each other. So I think we have a playoff going on right now. As with respect to the 12-team playoff, if the commissioners agree to move it forward in 2024 and 2025, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl would host the quarterfinal in 24 and then a semi in 25. Moving forward to 26 and beyond, obviously those are all new negotiations between CFP. We hope we've done enough to support college football and the CFP to be a part of those going forward. But, I think it's going to be great for college football. You'll see more teams that are in the mix longer. So if you have 12 teams and 12 bids, teams in November right now, there's a lot of teams that are still going to be in play. Whereas with the CFP right now, you can cut it down pretty much and start to see, okay, if this happens, this happens, what could be the potential Final Four? So I think it's going to be great for college football, more people involved, and certainly Ohio State doesn't have to worry about that. They're always in the mix.
Yes, they are. Gary, it's been fun having you on the podcast. It's been a fun conversation. Got to learn a lot more about the Peach Bowl Inc. Not just the Peach Bowl game, but also the Chick-fil-A kickoff game, and mention how it helped Nick Saban in his early tenure at Alabama. Possibility of Ryan Day going down there with Ohio State there this year in the Peach Bowl. It could honestly jumpstart and make the recruiting at Ohio State even bigger and better than it already is. Gary, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I would love to see Ohio State play down there in Atlanta in the Peach Bowl in a semifinal game because, as you say, football's crazy down there. There's a lot of Ohio State alumni down there. I just love watching football down there as well. So it's a great combination for me personally. I think it's even better for the football team and the possibility of playing in the Peach Bowl for the very first time this year. Gary, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. We'd love to host you here in December. So we appreciate you having us.